I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
It makes you think that at a fundamental level, this is sort of a he said, she said, right? And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe that woman on that tape?
I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
Like I said, I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
So J.D. Vance is out here pretending to be America's moral compass. But this week, he couldn't find North if it was tattooed on a Chick-fil-A wrapper. You know, this guy went from writing Hillbilly Elegy, the book about escaping poverty, to becoming the vice president of the very system he said was broken. It's like writing a diet book and then opening an all-you-can-eat buffet. He flew to Europe for the Munich Security Conference, gave this speech about how Europe is afraid of its voters, which is hilarious because back home he's afraid of his own.
Vice President Maybelline was making the rounds, attempting to defend his boss and the chairman of the FCC with a new fairy tale even a 5-year-old wouldn't believe.
Celebrities are rallying to his cause, saying this is a First Amendment assault being carried out by the FCC, Brendan Carr, and by the President of the United States himself. And to that, you say?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I'd like them to tell me exactly what Brendan Carr did to have Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, because number one, he is currently on the air, and to the extent that he isn't in certain stations, it's because he's not funny and because his ratings aren't very good.
I have some good news for you, J-Dog. We're back on all the stations.
The crowd is still finding their seats. The band fades down, and Jimmy Kimmel strolls out with that "I already know the punchline" grin. He taps the cards on his desk, looks into the lens, and says he's back on all the stations. The room explodes. That's the sound of a rumor dying. Then he pivots, zeroes in on J.D. Vance, and detonates a nickname so precise it could double as a product label: Vice President Maybelline.
He acts like he's out there defending the working class, but the second Trump frowns, J.D. changes his entire belief system faster than a Tesla stock price. And remember, this is the same J.D. Vance who once called Trump America's moral disaster. He literally said Trump was cultural heroin. Then he met him, and now he's his dealer. He's out there pushing the same stuff he used to warn people about.
There is definitely an element of Donald Trump's support that has its basis in racism or xenophobia. I think there's a chance, if I feel like Trump has a really good chance of winning, that I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I think that I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
It hits the way only a line that exposes vanity and insecurity at the same time can hit. Somewhere a comms guy knocks over his coffee, somewhere else a senator pretends not to hear the joke while rage typing a response. And out there in the feeds, the 47th president's favorite wingman pretends ratings are the problem while he becomes the punchline. Let's track how we got to the eruption, because this one was a 3-step dance. Step 1, right before Brooklyn Week, J.D. Vance toured Friendly Studios, saying Kimmel's brief absence was about bad ratings.
I mean to interrupt your bullshit. Go on.
There's something else that's important here, Laura, which is that these broadcast companies, ABC, NBC, CBS, they enjoy the public airwaves because they serve the public interest. So I actually think that we should be having a conversation about whether these companies are serving the public interest. That's actually totally separate from the Jimmy Kimmel issue because nothing happened to him. He's currently on the air, and to the extent that he's not, it's because advertisers don't like him because his ratings aren't very good.
My ratings aren't very good. Last time I checked, your ratings were somewhere between a hair in your salad and chlamydia. In 3.5 years, I'm not the one who's going to be doing mascara tutorials on YouTube.
He spent part of his week warning Americans that dating apps are more destructive than artificial intelligence. Really? AI is writing your speeches, buddy. You're worried about Tinder when the robots are learning how to lie better than you? He says online dating is tearing apart traditional families. The guy works for a man who has 3 marriages and 5 kids who all look like they share one Wi-Fi password. You want to lecture America about stable homes? You work for the Trump family, not the Brady Bunch.
He asked for an apology to people he said Kimmel had slandered. Big talk, straight face, perfect setup. Step 2, Kimmel comes back with the lights hotter than ever, tells America he is back on every station, then slides straight into Vance with a cosmetic counter haymaker. Vice President Maybelline, one line, permanent sticker. Step 3, Vance tries to yank the wheel on Fox, demanding contrition and insisting the joke proves the point. That's not control. That's a tantrum in a suit. And the tantrum is the story.
How did we wind up with a president and a vice president who wear more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined? A lot of pressure on J.D. Vance tonight. J.D. Vance hasn't been under a microscope like this since his wife asked him why the couch was so sticky. But Trump had good advice. He told him, just have fun. And you know what? It seems like he did.
I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are.
That's how you get the single cat ladies back on your side. You know, in some ways, you can't help but you kind of feel sympathy for J.D. Vance having to defend Donald Trump, who he himself openly denounced. It's kind of like being Diddy's defense attorney, you know?
Here's why Kimmel's line shredded so cleanly. It wasn't just a diss, it mapped the whole aesthetic in 4 words. The performative toughness, the brand obsession, the need to look camera ready even when the policy under the makeup is a mess. The nickname hit like a mirror. You could see the reflection twitch. When Kimmel followed with the mascara tutorial crack, you could feel the crowd connect the dots. This is not policy, this is packaging, and the packaging is cracking under the stage lights.
JD talks about family values while backing a president who spends more time golfing than parenting. He says men need to reclaim masculinity. Yeah, by all means, tell that to your boss, the man whose spray tan wipes off on the American flag. He's made himself the mascot of the forgotten working class, except the only thing he remembers is which billionaire is writing the campaign check this week. Every photo op he does has him in a barn wearing flannel talking about coal jobs, while the fine print says, made possible by Peter Thiel. The man's political soul is sponsored content.
Kimmel has a mean little superpower that he rarely gets credit for. He never needs to shout to land a hit. He reads the quote. He adds one sentence. He lets silence do the rest. It's slow cooking for comedy. That's why his clapbacks stick, while other hosts' rants evaporate by lunch. On this night, he let Vance's spin hang in the air long enough for the room to smell the ingredients. Bad ratings, cancel culture, hurt feelings disguised as high principle. He did not argue. He counted. Back on all the stations, back in Brooklyn, back in front of a crowd that sounded like playoff basketball.
In fact, both candidates were pretty darn polite to each other.
First of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. I agree, and I actually think I agree with you. I actually agree with Tim Walz.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said. Governor, I agree with you. I agree with that.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agreed.
Well, Trump is not going to like that at all. You're in a lot of trouble, JD. I was kind of hoping they'd ask the candidates like some fun questions. Like, you know, they used to do that. Like, is a hot dog a sandwich? And then J.D. Vance would stare into the camera and say, when you're from Haiti, any dog can be a sandwich. But they didn't. They could have used a lot more talk about cats and dog eating.
And every time he opens his mouth about culture, it's a new episode of Things Nobody Asked. One week it's dating apps, the next it's birth control, the next it's women being too career focused. He's like the cranky uncle at Thanksgiving who thinks feminism is a weather pattern. Then there's his big claim that America's in moral decline because people don't go to church enough. You know what else causes moral decline? Electing a guy who tried to overthrow democracy. But sure, tell me more about how Bumble is ruining society. He says he wants to stand up to global elites. Really? You flew to Munich in a private jet to say that, buddy? That's like yelling, down with yachts from the deck of your own. J.D. Vance is what happens when populism goes to finishing school.
That is not a man hiding from Nielsen. That is a man turning a hit job into a highlight reel. So why did J.D. Vance erupt? Because he got put in a box that fits. It is not fun being branded with a nickname that your opponents will use forever and your supporters will secretly hate because it's funny. You can debate a paragraph. You cannot debate a sticker. Kimmel stuck it on his forehead and kept moving. It is the oldest late night trick. Tag a target with something specific, true enough to sting, and short enough to travel.
Last night he posted an announcement. He said, I will be doing a personal play-by-play of the debate tomorrow between the brilliant J.D. Vance and the highly inarticulate tampon Tim Walz. I hope that cognitively challenged lion Kamala Harris will be listening so that she can again show the world how she will make up false facts and stories. I will be commenting on what is going on. Watch Truth Social tomorrow night. Watch Truth Social.
He wants to be seen as the people's champion, but he speaks like he's auditioning to narrate a documentary called The Death of Irony. And let's not forget, when the shutdown hit, he was silent while millions of Americans were wondering if they'd get food stamps. He didn't fight for them. He was too busy tweeting about real patriots and woke tech overlords. You know who cares about SNAP benefits? The people you wrote about in your book, JD, remember them? The ones who can't afford your lecture tour tickets?
The internet does the rest. That's the thing about Maybelline. You hear it once, and suddenly the next time Vance leans into a camera and tries the scowl, your brain supplies the bottle. There's also a timing lesson here. Vance's apologize tour happened in the window where the rumor mill insisted Kimmel was done. It's tempting to dunk when you think your opponent is off the air. Kimmel's response was live and loud and perfectly measured. We're back on every station. No gloating, no victory dance, just a sentence that made the cancellation narrative look like a balloon in a cactus garden.
Every time he gets on stage, he tries to sound tough. He says things like, "We're fighting for real Americans." Yeah, the real Americans who live in his imagination, the ones who still think the earth is flat and vaccines are witchcraft. JD Vance wants you to believe he's the next great conservative thinker, but he's really just Trump with a library card. He's got all the bluster, half the charisma, and none of the self-awareness. You can tell he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, but the only reason he looks that way is because the rest of his party keeps setting the bar underground. Look, JD, I'll give you credit. It's not easy to sell out your own book.
Then he turned to Vance and finished the job. I almost felt bad for whatever Booker called JD the next morning, almost. The other reason this moment popped is that Kimmel tucked it into a bigger point about what the 47th president and his circle keep doing. They declare the thing they don't like illegal. They claim satire is censorship. They say bad ratings while the clip hits 1 million views in an afternoon. They post about late night more than they post about governing. It is a worldview built on volume and pretend.
So on the biggest night of J.D. Vance's career, his running mate, he's telling his followers, watch me on Truth Social commenting on it. And here is some video of Mar-a-Lago watching tonight from home.
Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris.
I like what he's done with his bathroom.
Kimmel undermines it with two tools that do not blink: receipts and rhythm. He rolls the quote. He adds the tag. He keeps breathing. He trusts the audience to finish the paragraph. It drives them crazy because it works. Let's talk about the reaction, because the reaction is the tell. If the nickname didn't land, Vance would have ignored it. Instead, he went right back to friendly territory to demand an apology and reframe the segment as bullying. That's not stoicism. That's a flinch. And the fastest way to make a punchline immortal is to flinch on camera. Kimmel knew it. The crowd knew it.
Hi, I'm Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. The mainstream media, they want you to think that I'm weird. They call me creepy, cringy, awkward, that I give people something called the ick. They want you to think that I can't order a simple donut. But that's ridiculous. Follow me.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay. How long you worked here?
A year?
Okay. Donut.
The line immediately graduated from a one-night gag to a permanent chapter in the Vance file, right next to other self-inflicted wounds like the time he dipped into culture war sludge to impress the boss and ended up with a headline he couldn't outrun. There was a tiny moment in Kimmel's Brooklyn opener that sealed the deal. After the laugh, he just sat in it for a beat. No pile-on, no 15 tags, one beat. That beat told the room the point had landed. It told the internet to clip it there. It told Vance there would be no lifeline disguised as overkill.
It takes talent to write a story about fighting for your community and end it by joining the guy who mocked that same community on national TV. That's a full circle moment. It's like if the guy from the Lorax bought a chainsaw company. So congrats, J.D. Vance, the man who went from voice of the people to ventriloquist dummy of the powerful. You're proof that hypocrisy isn't dead. It just got a podcast.
That restraint is a weapon. When you know you've branded the moment, you do not add extra ink. You let the stamp dry. I know some people are going to say this is petty, that we should be talking about legislation, not mascara. I hear you. But politics is culture as much as it is policy. If you let power hide behind costume, the costume becomes the policy. If you can't name the performance as performance, you'll get tricked into treating showmanship like governing.
I brought inflation down to practically zero. And all of the groceries and all of the eggs and all of the things that you've been hearing about, they're back down. They're way down from where they were. I did something in 4 months that nobody's seen. And I have to say, in 4 months, and I said it before, and everyone's talking about it all over the world, we've got the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. We're the only country anybody's even talking about.
It's true, but they're talking about us in the same way people talk about the Diddy trial. It's with curiosity, disbelief, and revulsion.
Comments that you've made about Donald Trump. You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
Trump is a really bad candidate, and frankly, I think a really bad person.
Kimmel yanked off the wig in 2 lines. He turned the brand into the bit. That matters. It saves people time. It gives them a way to clock the con without a spreadsheet. There's a second arc under all this that makes the payoff sweeter. For months, the 47th president took victory laps every time a late-night host had a bad week. He declared shows canceled that were back on air by the end of the week. He treated programming decisions like personal revenge. The free speech cosplay got loud. Then, Kimmel walked into Brooklyn to an ovation and thanked the audience for sticking with him.
You know, as civil as the debate was, the troll-in-chief was not. He didn't like the fact that Tim Walz uses the word folks. He wrote, folks, Tampon Tim stealing Crooked Joe's signature catchphrase. Sad. He also didn't like the idea that Tim Walz was taking notes. Why Walz is taking so many notes, never seen a candidate take more. He needs the notes to keep his brain intact. And if that isn't the pumpkin calling the basketball orange, I don't know what is.
He didn't swing at the FCC. He didn't whine about affiliates. He did the work, delivered jokes, keep it tight, let the room decide. The room chose. That choice is why the Vance eruption felt so small. You cannot claim the show is failing while the ceiling is shaking with applause.
It's illegal under the Logan Act for private citizens to engage in foreign policy that undercuts America. But this J.D. Vance, before he made up the Haitians eating dogs story, he tweeted, Trump makes people I care about afraid. Immigrants, Muslims, etc. Because of this, I find him reprehensible. God wants better of us. I agree with this statement you no longer agree with. Of course, he deleted those tweets once he realized he could be Trump's running mate.
If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to America Facticity for more breaking news and late-night truth, and let me know in the comments what's worse, J.D. Vance's speeches or his dating app paranoia. Because honestly, I think both might be swiping left on America.